For 5 years, I built the firm's entire client base. 46 companies who trusted me with their biggest risks and their most fragile secrets. No vacations, no sick days. 70-hour weeks that blurred into each other. I was always the one answering the midnight calls, the one who could take chaos and put it back into order. My life was the firm. My name wasn't on the door, but without me, the doors would have shut long ago. On the day the CEO's son took over, he replaced me with his girlfriend. "It's just business," he laughed, extending a hand I didn't want to shake. I forced myself to take it, then walked out without saying a word. He thought he had won. He had no idea what he'd just set in motion. His name was Brandon Harlan, 30 years old. The kind of confidence you inherit, not the kind you earn. Glossy hair, expensive shoes, and the smirk of someone who had never had to finish what he started. He had spent the last few years advising startups, which in practice meant traveling, writing empty blog posts, and calling it thought leadership. The moment his father retired, the title executive director was handed to him like a birthday present. He redecorated almost instantly. The framed degrees and legal texts that once lined the shelves were packed away. In their place, a putting green and a neon sign that glowed over his desk. Move fast, break molds. Cultural momentum, he told me when he called me in. We're rewarding people who bring energy. "Is there an issue with the Morrison procurement deal?" I asked, calm as always. "Or with the Edelridge refinancing?" Both had taken months of my time, and they were days from closing. "It's not about details." He made a broad gesture toward the skyline. "We need vibes." That was his word. Vibes. Then came the folder. A non-compete that wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. An NDA filled with vague threats and 3 months severance if I didn't make trouble. Beside him sat Maya, his girlfriend, who had been hired as a paralegal only a few weeks earlier. She smiled at me as if she'd just won a prize. "I'll manage Tessa's transitions," she said. "You can't manage what you don't understand," I replied. My voice stayed even. "And you can't sign anything that requires a license." "That's no longer your concern," Brandon said. He leaned back, satisfied, like this was just another item on his to-do list. Then he added a word that still stung. "You're competent." Nobody's saying you're not competent. The way he said it, it sounded like worthless. I signed what I could sign. Refused what I knew was unenforceable. Left my badge on his desk. Packed my mug in a cardboard box. And I walked out of the building with my head high, past the reflection of that ridiculous neon sign. At home, I set the banker's box on my dining table and opened my laptop. There were no dramatic speeches, no immediate revenge. Just a quiet inventory. Lawyers are trained to separate facts from noise, and I was still a lawyer. The firm owned the files, the letterhead, the building, the marble lobby that impressed visitors. But I owned the frameworks I had built on my own time. The templates, the checklists, the training modules that turned chaos into order. I owned my knowledge. And most importantly, I owned the relationships. 46 clients whose loyalty had been earned through years of late nights, steady guidance, and trust. Trust doesn't belong to a firm. It belongs to the person who shows up when no one else will. I opened my personal contact list. 46 names, each more than a client. People who had let me into their lives, who had texted me pictures of newborns and anniversaries, who had whispered fears they couldn't share with their boards. I drafted one sentence on LinkedIn. "Effective today, I will be consulting independently on contract risk and operational compliance." No mention of the firm. No drama. Just a statement of fact. And then I pressed publish. Not long after, my phone buzzed. "Tessa, just saw your update. Coffee tomorrow? Same cafe?" Helena Cho, CFO of one of my earliest clients. I stared at the screen for a long moment. The NDA didn't forbid coffee. It didn't forbid friendship. And Helena had never been someone who spoke casually. I typed back, "As friends, always." That night, my dining room became a war room. I laid out my notes, printed the frameworks I had created, opened the files I'd organized in my personal cloud. No client data, nothing proprietary. Just the systems that made me good at my job. At 9:21, another message lit my phone. Tessa, I don't know if you can respond, but the new team just asked me what material adverse change means in our lender agreement. We close Friday. I feel sick. The words hit me like a punch. That clause had nearly cost Helena her financing once before. I had pulled her company back from disaster by making sure it was documented properly. Now she was back at the edge, with someone who didn't even know the definition. I typed slowly, carefully. I can't discuss your deal, but I can meet you as a friend and talk about general concepts. Tomorrow, 7 a.m., she replied. Old cafe. Same table, and Tessa? It's not just business when people forget why they're in business. When I put my phone down, the room was quiet. I rinsed my mug, set it beside the sink, and thought about those words. In the weeks that followed, people would say the firm collapsed in 30 days, that 46 clients left overnight. But in that moment, standing in my kitchen, I wasn't thinking about their empire. I was thinking about trust. The kind you can't buy. The kind you can't fake. The kind Brandon had never even noticed until it was already gone. And tomorrow at 7 a.m., I was about to be reminded that trust is stronger than marble lobbies or neon signs. The cafe was nearly empty when I walked in the next morning. Same cracked leather booths, same smell of burnt espresso, same elderly barista who'd been there since my first year at the firm. It was the place I'd gone whenever I needed to think, when cases were falling apart or negotiations dragged into the night. Now it was where I was about to sit across from Helena Cho, CFO of Calwell Manufacturing, one of my longest-standing clients. She was already at the back table, a half-drunk cappuccino in front of her, phone face down. When she saw me, she stood, and for a moment I thought she might hug me. Instead, she clasped both my hands. Tessa, what the hell happened? I slid into the booth across from her. It's complicated, I said carefully. Mostly nepotism, a little arrogance, and a lot of poor judgment. Her mouth tightened. Brandon? I didn't confirm or deny. You know I can't talk about firm business. I signed things, but I can say this. I'm no longer there and I'm exploring independent work. She leaned back, eyes sharp. Independent? Consulting, I clarified. Contract risk, compliance frameworks, negotiation prep. My own systems, my own intellectual property. Not representing anyone directly. For now, Helena exhaled like she'd been holding her breath all night. Good. Because yesterday, the new team asked me to define material adverse change. In writing. They're handling our refinancing, Tessa. $120 million on the line. And they don't know the most basic clause. I felt my stomach tighten. I remembered the panic 2 years earlier when Calwell's lenders tried to pull financing after a minor dip in quarterly earnings. I had spent 3 straight days negotiating carve-outs and thresholds that saved their credit line. Without those terms, the company might not even exist today. I can't comment on your deal, I said slowly, but I can tell you what the clause means in general. It's about risk, about lenders protecting themselves if something goes catastrophically wrong. It has to be negotiated carefully, or it becomes a trap. Helena pressed her palms together. That's exactly what I told them. And do you know what they said? Don't worry, we'll Google it. The barista set down 2 fresh coffees without being asked. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. Helena, I wish I could help. But if I say too much, they'll drag me into court. You know how aggressive that family can be. I'm not asking you to break contracts, she said. I'm asking you to keep being who you've always been. The one person I can call when things get dangerous. I don't care if you're at Harlan and Pierce or sitting in your kitchen. I trust you. Her words stung more than Brandon's dismissal the day before. Trust. That was the currency I had always valued most. It wasn't written into any contract, but it was what every client came to me for. Here's what I can do, I said finally. I'll build general frameworks. Educational, not specific. Regulatory updates, compliance alerts, explanations of concepts that are publicly available. No client names, no deal references. If people read them and realize something applies to their situation, that's on them. Not me. Helena smiled faintly. That's all I needed to hear. She slid her phone across the table. On the screen was a LinkedIn notification. My post from the night before already had dozens of reactions, half from people in the corporate community we both moved in. You won't need to reach out, she said. They'll come to you. I left the cafe with my heart racing. For 5 years, I'd been invisible, competent, reliable, never flashy. Now, for the first time, I could feel the weight of 46 relationships shifting, recalibrating around me instead of the firm. By the afternoon, 3 more messages appeared on my phone. We need to talk. David Klein, COO, Nexus Biotech. Do you know anyone who can actually read an indemnity clause? Sarah Rodriguez, General Counsel, Blackstone Holdings. Lunch this week? Off the record. Daniel Foster, CFO, Meridian Corp. Each message was a test of boundaries. I typed careful responses. Happy to catch up as friends. Always available to discuss industry trends. No firm ties anymore, just my own perspective. Every word measured, every sentence crafted to honor the agreements I had signed while still leaving the door open. Because the truth was, the clients weren't asking for firm representation anymore. They were asking for me. That evening, I spread papers across my dining table again. My frameworks, my training decks, my checklists. Not the firm's property. Mine. Developed on nights and weekends when their clunky systems crashed, refined deal after deal until they worked like second nature. I opened a new document on my laptop and typed the header. Independent Compliance Guidance, January edition. Underneath, I wrote the first topic. Material adverse change, what it means and why it matters. Not advice, not specific, just education. The kind of thing any law professor could lecture on, but written with the clarity only someone who had lived through it could provide. As I typed, the weight of the last 24 hours settled into something sharper. Brandon thought he had cut me out of the picture. What he hadn't realized was that I was the picture. The clients didn't stay because of the neon signs or the marble lobby. They stayed because I picked up the phone at 2 a.m. and walked them through crises with a steady voice. By midnight, the document was finished. 10 pages. Clean, professional, and ready to send to anyone who asked. Not as their lawyer, but as an independent consultant. I leaned back in my chair and looked around the dining room. The box from the office still sat in the corner, unopened except for my mug. Billable and breathable. A cheap joke once. Now it felt like a relic. I wasn't billable anymore. I wasn't theirs anymore. I was free. And freedom, I realized, was the one thing Brandon had never considered when he shoved that folder across the desk. He thought he was cutting me loose. What he really did was cut the tether that bound me to his sinking ship. The phone buzzed again. Helena, this time with just 4 words. Friday won't happen without you. I closed my eyes. The tide had already turned. By Friday morning, the air in my house felt heavy, like the pressure before a storm. I tried to distract myself with errands, even scrubbed the kitchen floor, but my phone wouldn't stop buzzing on the counter. At 10:42, Helena called. Her voice was tight, clipped. It's over, Tessa. The refinancing collapsed. I sat down hard at the kitchen table. What happened? They missed the deadline for the lender's supplemental disclosures. Something about an electronic signature mismatch. I don't even think they knew the documents had to be notarized. The lender pulled the deal. Her voice cracked. Do you know what that means? 2 years of positioning, hundreds of hours, millions of dollars in fees. Gone. The board is furious. I rubbed my forehead, feeling the ache spread behind my eyes. I'm so sorry, Helena. Don't be sorry. Her words were sharp, but not at me. Be ready. People are going to call you. I know you can't solicit, but I also know this. What just happened is going to spread like wildfire. When we hung up, I stared at the box still sitting by the wall, filled with the remnants of 5 years of my life. The mug, the pens, a few framed certificates. Small things. But what they represented was enormous. Brandon and Maya had been at the helm for less than a week, and already one of the firm's cornerstone clients had suffered a collapse. At 11:30, a text came through from Marcus, one of the senior associates who'd worked under me. "You didn't hear this from me, but Helena just called Brandon every name in the book." She demanded her file back. "She's gone, Tessa. She's done with them." I set the phone down, my hands trembling. One domino had fallen, and I knew how this game worked. When one top client leaves, others start to wonder if they should too. That afternoon, 2 more messages arrived. From Sarah Rodriguez at Blackstone Holdings. "Tessa, is it true Helena left?" From David Klein at Nexus Biotech. "Heard a mess at Calwell. We need to talk." I responded cautiously, always the same refrain. "I can't discuss specifics, but I'm available as a friend if you'd like to catch up." The distinction mattered. It was the line between surviving and being dragged into litigation. Still, I knew the truth. These weren't just friendly check-ins. They were lifelines being thrown in my direction, because the people holding them no longer trusted the hands that were supposed to be guiding them. That evening, I sat at my dining table, surrounded by papers. The frameworks I had created stared back at me, quiet proof of the difference between competence and chaos. I thought of the nights I'd stayed up redrafting clauses until they sang, the weekends I'd missed weddings and birthdays because a client needed me to save their deal. That investment wasn't something you could just swap out for a neon sign and a girlfriend with a new title. The next morning, my phone rang again. It was Sarah. I hesitated before answering. "Tessa, I don't care about NDAs," she said the moment I picked up. "Our board is demanding answers. We got a compliance notice from the state last night. If it's real, we're in trouble. And the new team at Harlan and Pierce told me not to panic. Do you know what they based that on?" A Google search. My throat tightened. "Sarah, you know I can't advise you on firm matters anymore." "I don't want advice," she snapped. Then her voice softened. "I want to know if I'm crazy for thinking they're in over their heads." I closed my eyes. "You're not crazy." She exhaled, long and heavy. "That's enough." That's all I needed to hear. Thank you. When I hung up, I realized something. The clients weren't asking me to swoop in and take over. They were asking me to confirm what they already suspected, that they weren't safe where they were. And once a client stops feeling safe, it's only a matter of time before they move. By Monday morning, the cracks had widened. Helena's departure was already circulating in Houston's corporate circles. The whispers were growing louder. The new leadership was incompetent, deals were failing, and the one person who had held everything together was gone. Marcus sent another text. "Emergency meeting this morning." Brandon tried to reassure the team, but no one's buying it. Maya was in tears. I give it 2 weeks before everything unravels. I placed the phone face down on the table and leaned back in my chair. For years, I had been invisible, my work taken for granted. Now, for the first time, I wasn't just visible. I was unavoidable. The first domino had fallen. The others were wobbling, and all I had to do was let gravity take care of the rest. 2 weeks later, the firm looked like a house with the foundation ripped out. From the outside, it still stood. Marble lobby, brass plaques, glossy brochures, but inside, everything was crumbling. I didn't have to guess. The calls and texts painted the picture for me. Sarah Rodriguez sent me a photo of a filing riddled with typos. This is what they submitted on our behalf. I can't let this continue. David Klein's voice shook when he called. They forgot to file an export compliance certificate. Do you know what the fines would have been if the regulator caught it? Millions, Tessa. Millions. And Marcus, steady Marcus, texted me late one night. 3 partners walked out today. Brandon screamed at everyone. Maya hasn't shown up in 2 days. It's chaos. One by one, the clients left. They didn't announce it, didn't make a scene. They just stopped returning Brandon's calls, stopped paying invoices, and quietly retained other firms. Some reached out to me, carefully phrased, always cautious. Do you have bandwidth for independent consulting? Or could we meet to discuss frameworks? I never solicited, never crossed the line, but I answered every message. By the end of the month, the count was staggering. Out of 46 clients, 45 were gone. The last holdout was Thorne Industries, run by Robert Thorne, a man who played golf with William Harlan, Brandon's father. Loyalty, not competence, kept them tethered. I knew it couldn't last. On a Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number, Houston area code. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the transcript popped up. Miss Miles, this is Linda Cho, General Counsel for Thorne Industries. We need to meet. Today, if possible. I stared at the message. Thorne was the last domino. If they left, the firm wasn't just weakened, it was finished. We met in a quiet conference room at a downtown hotel. Linda looked exhausted. We trusted them because of Robert's friendship with William. But Brandon's team drafted our supplier contracts last month. They missed an arbitration clause. Do you understand what that means for us? Yes, I said softly. It means you could be dragged into court instead of settling privately. Exposure, costs, delays. It's a nightmare. She nodded, eyes heavy. We can't afford to stay. But we also can't afford a public battle. Robert wants this handled quietly. I folded my hands on the table. Then you need to transition. Find a new firm that will protect you. Quickly. Her gaze sharpened. And who do you recommend? The question hung between us. I thought of all the times I'd been told I was competent, reliable, never flashy. And I realized this was my moment to prove that being competent was more than enough. I recommend myself, I said finally. Independent consulting. Contract risk, compliance, negotiation strategy. I'll work alongside whatever firm you retain. I won't replace them, but I'll make sure this never happens again. Linda studied me for a long time. Then she extended her hand. Consider yourself retained. That night, I sat at my dining table, contract signed, coffee cooling beside me. The war room I had built from scraps now felt like the headquarters of something real. At 8:15, Marcus called. It's over, he said. His voice was flat. Robert Thorne pulled his account today. That was the last client. Brandon's finished, I closed my eyes. 5 years of my life, swallowed by arrogance in a single month. But it wasn't grief I felt. It was relief. The next morning, the Houston Business Journal ran the headline. Harlan and Pierce loses entire client base in 30 days. The article cited nepotism, mismanagement, and lack of qualified leadership as causes. My name wasn't mentioned, but the subtext was obvious. The clients had followed the person they trusted, not the firm that betrayed her. Later that week, I met Helena again at the cafe. She raised her cup in a mock toast. 46 clients gone in 30 days. Do you realize what you did? I didn't do anything, I said quietly. They made their choices. No, Tessa, she said, leaning forward. You reminded us that trust matters more than marble floors or fancy titles. That's what you did. Her words stayed with me. Trust. That was the lesson. Not revenge, not destruction. Trust. I walked out of the cafe into the Houston sunlight and felt something I hadn't in years. Freedom. I wasn't chained to someone else's name on the building. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was Tessa Miles, and I had built something that couldn't be stolen or replaced. And as for Brandon? The last I heard, he was trying to pitch disruptive legal innovation on LinkedIn, the kind of hollow noise that only works until someone asks a real question. Me? I was too busy answering the phone, because when 46 clients leave in 30 days, it doesn't mean the end. It means the beginning of something new.